Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. The Trump administration has claimed that in the interest of full disclosure, they've released surveillance footage video from the cell block of Jeffrey Epstein on the day of his death. All of this to prove that there was no foul play, even though at least a minute of the footage had been mysteriously missing. Now, we're all aware of the biggest disputed point that came out of this Trump administration explanation of events, that they have now produced video from Epstein's cell block on the day that he died. Video that's been out there for at least 5 years, but that nobody had seen or even thought to release. Now, Joe Rogan on his little podcast, he interviewed Kash Patel, who is now the Attorney General, and this was their exchange on that particular point about where this video might have come from.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was told, what I'd read, was that the guards were not paying attention or were sleeping.
Well,
right?
And in short order, you'll see it.
Is that correct?
Well, it's hard to surmise that from a video, right?
Right.
Where they and look, do guards doze off on the night shift? Yeah. But no one can get in to the cell. And if they had gotten in to the cell, you would see it.
But we were told that the cameras were down.
Well, I don't know who said that.
But that was in the news.
We're giving you all the footage we have.
So why wasn't that released immediately? Why did this speculation escalate?
I think you'd have to ask whoever the Attorney General back then was, Bill Barr.
Now, as you heard, Kash Patel said that he didn't know anything about any news reports that video of Epstein's cell on the date that he died had been deleted. In fact, that was the main reason everybody started screaming that Epstein had been murdered and didn't actually commit suicide, because the government couldn't produce any video from his cell block on the day that he died. Now, this is a part that pains me because I hate to do anything that would substantiate or otherwise support a worm like Kash Patel, but something that I do think needs to be said. When Patel said that he wasn't aware of any news stories saying that video on Epstein's cell block had been deleted, well, from what I've found, he's actually accurate about that. What Joe Rogan is erroneously referencing are the news reports from Epstein's first suicide attempt. That's the surveillance video that went missing. Surveillance video from Epstein's cell block on the date that he first attempted suicide. That was July 23rd, 2019. That was the story that made all of those headlines, and that was in January of 2020 when that news broke, that the video from Epstein's cell block on the date of his first suicide attempt had been quote-unquote accidentally deleted. That's part of the reason why the guards who were on his cell block got themselves charged. And that's the misconception that makes it where you got a lot of people now saying that, wait a minute, everybody knows that the video on the date of Epstein's death, that's the video that got deleted. Sorry, but it wasn't. Now, keep in mind that after Epstein's first suicide attempt, the guards put him on suicide watch, but I guess they must have gotten bored of watching him because he got taken off of suicide watch soon thereafter, and then about 3 weeks later on August 10th, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his cell with marks on his neck, and the authorities saying surely it had to be a suicide. Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr, had promised to look into it, but of course, that was the last we heard of it. Until now. But as far as the assertion from Joe Rogan that there were news stories that the surveillance video from Epstein's cell block on the day of his death was deleted, that's not accurate. In fact, it was in November of 2019, months before the story about the first suicide attempt video being deleted, that the white media was reporting the Bureau of Prisons reportedly referenced the prison's internal video system several times, indicating that, at least on the day of Epstein's death, the cameras were working and would be of use to the investigation. Bureau of Prisons Director Kathleen Sawyer testified to Congress and said that the video from Epstein's cell block was grainy but usable. And the reason she gave was that they were using an analog video system at the time but were in the process of upgrading to digital. But those are the actual white media news reports that I found. The surveillance video on the date of Epstein's first suicide attempt was what got deleted, and the surveillance video on the day of his death was grainy but usable. And CNN wasn't the only white media outlet to report that. There were others reporting that the government said that they had surveillance video that confirmed nobody had gone into Epstein's cell. However, I'd say that based on the quality of the video, the poor angle of the camera, and the missing segment from it, to call the video usable, well, that word's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Again, I'm not trying to say anyone's innocent here, or that the fact that the crappy, no-quality video was released means that Epstein's death couldn't have been foul play. I'm just wanting to clear up a misconception about which video got deleted, because with the crappy quality of the video that they put out, you can't make heads or tails of it. There's no way to know what's going on, so the assertion that the video somehow proves that there was no foul play, that's just wrong. Prisons are part of law enforcement, and just like with the police, the thugs and badges who work in these prisons only seem to have technical problems with their cameras when there's something that could get them into trouble. So as far as I'm concerned, it's completely and thoroughly feasible that these guys either could have killed him themselves or had somebody else do it. When it comes to Epstein, we basically got one of two scenarios. The first is that somebody or a group of people wanted him to be shut up, so they made sure that either the guards or perhaps Epstein's roommate got rid of him. Or, and this is just as likely, those same concerned parties reached out to Epstein and they told him he's going to have to take one for the team and that he can either off himself or wait for them to do it, which may not be quick or clean. So Epstein decided to go out on his own terms. He failed the first time but succeeded in taking his life the second time. That's the other scenario. So, did he jump or was he pushed? The release of the video from Epstein's cell block on the day that he died has only yielded more questions as opposed to answers. And there's at least a few people in the white media who are asking those questions, but the Trump administration, especially the Orange Man, they don't seem to want to be taking any more questions about this. As far as they're concerned, hey, we put the video out, so it's case closed.
Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of his death?
Yeah, sure. If
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Very interesting the way that Trump responded to that question. The reporter simply asked why was it that one of Trump's U.S. attorneys said that Epstein had worked for an intelligence agency. Remember, Epstein died on Trump's watch. So this was his DOJ that was saying this. And what was the Orange Man's response to that innocent question? I can't believe we're still talking about this Epstein creep. Trump is the main guy who made his administration synonymous with conspiracy theories, especially as they pertain to elections. So another conspiracy theory about a dubious death that happened on his watch, and he's sitting here going, hey, we put out the video, why are we still talking about this guy? We got more important things to talk about. Really? That doesn't even sound right, especially not coming from Trump. And there's a lot of people on the white right who are disappointed with him for having done this. And these people are fools, by the way. Even if Trump never was on the Lolita Express, that doesn't change the fact that he was still in Epstein's orbit for years, and that his mysterious death happened on Trump's watch during Trump's first term. It was Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr who Patel threw under the bus, who promised an investigation. And as with so many other promises from Trump's administration, that was pretty much the last we heard of it. Trump knows the longer that people dwell on the subject of Epstein, the worse that it is for him. But let's not be naive here. There's no way that powerful men were not indulging in all kinds of degeneracy because of Epstein. People who would be in a position to support Trump politically, they would like to make sure that if there's any dirt that he had on them, they wanted to die a quiet death, and Trump's certainly in a position to make that happen. Power doesn't merely respect power, power also protects power. And since Trump's president, whatever the official line is regarding Epstein's death, that's what he's going to uphold. I'm sorry for those of you who thought that maybe the Orange Man was going to reveal who really killed President Kennedy or that he would confirm whether UFOs are real, but that was never going to happen. As a wise man once said, When you put on Caesar's robes, you must act as Caesar. Now, that doesn't mean act as in put on the royal airs of the king and walk around like you got a stick up your behind, but it does mean you better understand what the interests of established power are, because now you're part of the establishment too, and their interest of a necessity must be yours. Trump talked about deficit spending, and now he ramrodded through arguably the biggest federal budget ever, and instead of calling it an abomination, he instead called it the Big Beautiful Bill. Yeah, deficit spending that the great-great-great-great-grandkids are still going to be struggling to pay off 1,000 years from now. That's beautiful, ain't it? I know that there's some people out there who convince themselves that because the orange man is genuinely contemptuous of the white right establishment, that this automatically means that he's going to be a champion for the working class's issues and exposing and bringing to light every single pet issue, concern, and unfinished business that every conspiracy theorist has. But again, that was never going to happen. You heard anything about Pizzagate or any of the other urban legends that the Alex Joneses out there have proliferated over the years? Yes, there are things that Trump has been a disruptor on, but even with the illegal alien roundup, I've been mindful of making it clear that those raids have mostly been for the cameras. There would need to be tens of thousands of people being forcibly removed every single week in order for these efforts to be truly substantive. And that hasn't been happening. I've also said repeatedly that I don't think it's truly genuine what he's doing until he goes after the businesses, landlords, and banks who have been acting as both magnets to attract these illegals to the U.S. and acting as a support system to make it where their illegal activities are lucrative for themselves and their home countries. Until he deals with them, he's not really dealing with the problem. There's been more than a little talk that I've read that Trump has made exceptions for so-called farm workers. Apparently the rumor is that if you can prove that you've been picking rutabagas, or that if you got some sort of white farmer who vouches for you, well, that would be enough for Trump to say, well, as long as you're sitting here picking cabbage, I guess it's okay for you to stay. We get trolls and bootlicks and shills for both parties who whine at the black media about why it is that we don't endorse their chosen politicians. And that even when we mention something that one of them may do that's incidentally beneficial to us, why is it that we don't fall in love with them then? It's because we're politically mature, that's why. Politicians by their very nature are creatures of self-interest. We are creatures of black interest. You gotta be careful about who it is you choose as your heroes. So for those people who are thinking to themselves that the Epstein case would constitute some sort of bellwether event, that there was going to be some real transparency and that the dirty dealings of the rich and powerful were going to be exposed, Trump is one of the rich and powerful who's got tons of dirty dealings. You truly believe that he wants all of his dirty laundry to be aired? Get real. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but the questions surrounding his death and the people who might have benefited from it, those are not dead at all. Though I do think that some of Trump's fanboys are figuring out something that should have been common sense. And that is, if you expect Donald Trump to stick his neck out and get it chopped off on your behalf, well, let's just say Jeffrey Epstein's corpse isn't the only thing that's going to be left hanging. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Immigrant B1, William Zellers, Chris Baker, Chandler Glover, and D. Sherrod. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.